Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Goffstown School Board meeting. I call this meeting to order at 6:03. If we can stand and say the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, do we have correspondence tonight?
None this evening.
All right, any good news since Monday?
I'll just say Maple Ave had an impressive family night on Monday. So, went very well. Again, a lot of excitement and enthusiasm from the teachers. So after a very...
Can't hear. I don't know if it's on.
Sorry. A great family night at Maple Ave on Monday. And a lot of enthusiasm and, energy from the teachers after a long day. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you, Caroline. Anyone
So
else?
I do think that the secret is to speak into the microphone and then it goes over
the...
I appreciate it.
Go ahead, Jenny.
I was going to say the same. I did hear that it was very hard for people to hear on TV last week. So if we did speak into our microphones, it probably would make it easy. I'm sure GTV probably in their magic fixed it, but if we could speak more loudly for people watching it at the time.
Anyone else with good news? All right, seeing none, I'll open to public comment. And I don't see any. So we're going to approve the October 2nd meeting minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look through them?
No.
There was quite a bit. Anybody see anything?
31.
Yeah. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
I have a motion by Ellen. Do I have a second? By Nicole. Any further discussion? I know Dan's down there. You have to go over.
I will get your attention if
Okay.
need be. Thank you.
All right. So we have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
Abstain.
Oh, we have one abstention. Did you get that, Denise? Ginny. All right. So the next thing is our first read policies. So Denise gave us a sheet. There was a couple of board members that had some suggestions for changing things. Does anybody have any other questions on policies?
I've got one or two. I'm looking at IHBAA and just look, sorry.
Which one?
IHBAA. And I'm just looking at the comment that the handbook title has not been changed by the education department. I was a little confused about what's happening there. Are we changing a title that's going to be different somewhere else, or what's happening there?
Hang on, I'm still trying to find one.
I just want to make sure if we're referencing something from the Department of Ed that it's going to be by the name that people would have to be able to find it by.
That is the current name.
Okay, so the crossed out one's the old one then.
Yeah, the crossout is the old one.
Okay, perfect. That answers.
And
my
actually, the procedural safeguards and the rules are actually two different entities altogether. So the procedural safeguards is correct.
question. Perfect, thanks.
Thanks, Nicole. Anyone else have any questions? You can read through what Denise gave you tonight. These will come back to our next scheduled board meeting for second reads.
I have one more probably quick one on IGE. It's also highlighted page 2. It says in accordance with board policy, we don't have this policy. So I wasn't sure if that was something we needed to create or adjust. Oh, perfect, thank you.
Did she answer you?
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Thank you. You're welcome. Are you all set, Nicole?
Yep, that's it, thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, so these will come back at our next scheduled board meeting for second reads. All right, so now we're going to get into the rest of our budget discussion. I'm going to finish up Mountain View and the high school.
This
Chair, just in reference to quote-unquote "old business," I did ask a question of Scott, so I'd like to go to page 27 of our notes section,
Okay,
if we can.
sure.
So on reference line 768, so on page 27, reference line 768, the Bartlett voice communication, I had a question on there. After Scott did some research and Scott could do some, I'd like to make a motion to reduce the new section by $2,350.
And what number, I'm sorry?
This is line 768
768.
on page 27.
And you want
the-
to reduce that by how much?
$2,350 for the, so it'd be minus $2,350 in the new,
Okay.
which would bring us down to $5,000 even in the proposed. And Scott, hopefully
Yes. Yeah, you did. That's-
thank you.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
And the reason for this, I asked a question, Ginny, because we were, was it actuals from prior, or, I don't have the actual sheet.
Yeah, it was related to the actuals were lower over the last 3 years, and I don't anticipate that it's going to change dramatically, not to that level, so that's why there was a substantial reduction in that line.
All right, so Denise Jarrett made a motion, Nicole seconded. Does anybody have any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Thanks, Jared.
And thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
I think did we leave off on 52?
Yep, Mountain View. All right, so we're on 51, at the top starts Mountain View.
Wait, 51? Page
Yeah, 51 with notes. Well, Mountain View
52.
starts up here.
52.
Oh, mine says, oh, 52, sorry, I can't read. 52.
Okay, now I've got them all. Find it over here. What am I looking for?
All right, we can move on to page 53 if everybody's set. We can move on to page 54.
Heather, I just wanted to make a point that I went through yesterday, looking at Jared's question, I went through the budget again, and there were probably, 6 to 8 notes that I updated with respect to the amounts. So that's always the tricky part when you've got 90-something pages of a budget, making sure that the notes were updated so that the note totals reflect what kind of should be there. Happens every year. So I did make those corrections in the system, but it's just not, I didn't want to print another
Right,
packet for
because
you
these
guys.
were printed a while ago.
So Scott, maybe when we get to those, if you could just highlight them, if they are from page 53 on.
Okay.
I wouldn't go back to the previous ones,
Yep.
but just maybe new ones.
Yeah, good idea.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Electronic, I gotta get the
What
right line.
number?
I am looking for the line. 1543,
1543.
MEMS, regular ed, electronic information. That's a huge jump.
It's the reading, I think, 25.
It went up 10,000.
Video Wonders, oh, the Wonders
Wonders
curriculum
reading
thing,
Yeah, the
that's,
software. Scott, is that accurate?
Unfortunately, I could not hear.
So on page 54, reference number 1543, MVMS regular ed electronic information went from 17,000 to 27,000. Is that a software increase?
The notes are reflective. It's the Wonders Reading curriculum cycle.
Okay.
That accounts for $25,000 of that. That's what we're doing in all of the buildings, so.
are all, it seems like this program, Wonders Reading Program, are all reading programs this expensive? And we see them over and over?
Yes.
They are all like this?
And again, the board will recall at our last meeting on Monday, I shared that the last 2 times that we purchased a core reading program, the first was Reading Streets, the second was Wonders. We used kind of one-time money to do that each time. So when you purchase a program, you often get the materials for a set number of years. I think it was, this is 3 for us. So now at the end of that time, we now have to buy the new electronic subscriptions to all of those things.
I remember you saying
And just in general, a reading program for a district our size is probably in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. So just to put this whole program in context, they are very expensive.
And how many years do we get out of?
This is 3.
So we get 3 years out of this purchase?
Of the consumables
free.
and the electronic pieces, correct.
Okay.
But we also got additional stuff, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Is this Wonders where we got some additional like login where there's at no cost to us? If I'm remembering correctly?
That was when we were talking about the Math and You program, that we
Okay.
were able to get some additional materials like manipulative kits and things like that.
Okay.
This is separate.
Yeah.
But we do get decodable books for our leveled readers and things like that as part of this program as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Helen. Go ahead, Ginny.
And I know Wendy, when you buy these programs, usually you're really a good negotiator and get an awful lot of stuff free. So I would think after the free stuff ends that you've gotten, there are some costs that we have to pay that we didn't initially. So, I mean, you're always good bargain shoppers too.
We absolutely are. A lot of times I can negotiate for free teacher manuals and things like that. I do everything I can to try to lower the price for the district.
Right. Thank you. Go ahead, Jared.
Thank you. Reference line 1549, these are the musical new equipment for $1,500. I know that in the past we've spent more than that, but it just says purchase of music equipment. Are these like, these aren't recorders, but are these actual instruments?
Wendy, can you recall what specifically they may be asking for, Scott? So I know one as an example would be like a Barry saxophone.
Okay.
So that's an instrument that we need a kid to play, but they're so giant that the school buys it and we keep it at the school.
Yeah.
So we typically buy like one instrument a year.
We do. We have a rotation that's
Yeah.
set up at the middle school, so after so many years, you know, if they need a new drum, if they need a new, you know, those larger instruments for the most part that we don't want kids lugging back and forth to home, those are the instruments that we have on a cycle for getting new ones for.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on page 54?
The school.
Go ahead, Jared.
Right below it, reference line 1551, 10 adaptive iPads for $5,000. We don't have anything in the prior years that were budgeted, so shouldn't this be listed as new?
So this is for assistive technology, which is typically part of an IEP. And we have not had this in our budget, and we're getting, unfortunately, we have more students who require iPads or assistive technology, and because it's part of their IEP, we're putting it in the budget. I would say that it's somewhat analogous to what we did with some of these sound systems where, you know, we have students who have hearing challenges, and so that's why you'll see that. It's not only there, it'll be in a few of the other schools as well.
So shouldn't that be listed under a different function?
Yeah, why wouldn't that be in the 1200 function, Scott?
First bid.
Because I think in this case, it's an accommodation per se, a
Okay, so this might
504.
This might be for
504.
504. needs.
504, yeah. Again, this was a request from the schools and from our IT director that he was getting a lot of requests for iPads for assistive technology. So in some cases, it's a special needs student, in some cases, it's not.
So philosophical discussion, since we haven't had this budgeted in prior years, and it's not part of if it's part of an IEP, I figure it would be part of function 1200.
Right.
I think this should be listed as a new item and not a default item. That might be my opinion. But I don't know what the rest of the board
Then
feels
if
on
you,
it.
if you want, we can put it in a 1200 line.
I'd be more comfortable with that being under a sped line. If it's an IEP that we know that we have to cover contractually by statute, then I'd feel more comfortable it being in a 1200 line for default versus being under a general 1100 line.
And listed as new.
Right. And a 504 would be in the 1,200 lines too, right?
Well,
Not
Not
necessarily.
necessarily.
Nope.
4 is not special.
But it could be.
It could be,
It could
yeah.
be.
I mean, because you're talking about assistive technology.
Right. So are we agreeing to move it to sped?
That's fine. That would be under line 16, reference line 1629. I would just add $5,000 to that one. So it'd be 8,500, and then
Do you
make
need
the
a
other one
motion
0.
for that?
What?
Yeah, why don't we do a motion to zero out the 1,100, 731 line, and add it to the 1,200, 731 line.
So moved. Did Denise get that?
All right,
No.
Ellen made the motion. Denise,
The
did
motion
you get
was
that?
to reduce line 1,100, 731 by $5,000 to make it 0, and to add $5,000 to 1,200, 731.
And Ellen made that motion.
I will second that motion.
And Jared will second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. All right, so let's move on to page 55.
Oh, excuse me. What line am I on? Well, this is not helping me. Okay.
All right, moving on to page 56.
Heating device warranty contracts. Line 1608?
1608,
Yeah. Why is it reduced by 1,000 when it's been the 2 for 3 years? 2 years?
hearing device warranty contracts.
Based on actuals?
Actuals.
Ah, okay. Thank you. This is line.
All right, moving on to page 57. All right, we can move on to page 50. Oh, did you have a question,
Yeah,
Alan, on
I
page
had to-
57?
I had to double check what I was asking.
Yep.
I guess line 1652,
Mm-hmm.
athletics, other professional. It's up to 19,000.
Yeah, it increased, the 856. It has the notes there.
So that's going to be like our referees, our umpires, our
And that's just an
officials.
expense for that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alan. All right, page 58. Moving on to page 59. Moving on to page 60. This is all benefits for teachers and paraprofessionals.
We're on page 60, correct?
On page 60, yes. We can go to 61.
Well,
Do you have a question on 61?
got a question on 60.
Okay.
Reference line 1717, health service general supplies, default is 3,440. Looking at our prior years, it might have been during COVID, our actuals were 4,368, $5,000 and $5,096. Is this just kind of bringing us down to?
Yeah,
nursing?
I mean, we're still trying to find the new normal on some of these supply lines.
So we don't think that we should stay at this? We don't think that we have to increase it?
Not this year. I mean, we'll take a look at it again next year, see if that trend continues. But the challenge on the health lines is that specifically was it artificially inflated due to COVID? And
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. All right, moving on to 61. We can move on to page 62.
right, on page 62, I did change the notes on line 1778. That should say 8,000. And then on line 1782, it should say 12,000 in that note.
82 instead of 15?
Correct.
12,000.
If I may,
Yeah, go ahead, Ellen.
on that same 1781, that's like a doubling of the line, and I see what they're asking for, something called Gale subscription, 10 online databases for research.
You're going to see
Yeah,
a
so-
corresponding decrease at Goffstown High School. Goffstown High School was bearing the burden of the majority of that cost. And in a reasonable, this is a kind of a housekeeping item, you're going to see this one go up, and you're going to see the one at the high school go down.
I would just share that these are databases that are research databases. So this is when you want to look at studied empirical evidence research as opposed to just kind of Googling something. So these are professional journals and research and literature.
And Wendy has some.
I also thought I'd mention, as we're talking about software, I know Mr. Talbot had asked just for some data as we were talking about Discovery Ed, but I also do have some data about Gale. Just at the start of this school year alone at Goffstown High School, we had over 1,000 sessions of kids researching using our Gale product. Last year, again, just at Goffstown High School alone, we had over 18,000 sessions of using those online Gale databases. I'll also mention, because the question was specifically asked about Discovery Ed, during the 22-23 school year, we had over 200 students and over 200 teachers and over 1,000 students accessing Discovery Ed for more than 8,000 interactions in that program. So I just thought that was important data for you to know that we are utilizing those online subscriptions that we have.
Awesome, thank you, Wendy.
Good information.
All right, if everybody's good with 62, we can go to 63. right, we can move to page 64.
What do we get for the PBIS materials?
What do we get for the PBIS materials?
Yeah.
Wendy, you want to take that one? So, but while Wendy's coming to the mic, PBIS is our positive behavioral interventions and supports. That's a whole school behavioral model. And the premise of that is that you're rewarding desired pro-social behaviors. So these would be, they could be programs, they could be
Yep,
like
it's-
special treats for kids.
Absolutely. So we use a lot of non-food reward items, but we also create posters and things like that to go with the themes that they're going over in those tier one, instructional methodologies of what does proper lunchroom behavior look like? What does proper bus behavior look like? And they put that around the school beyond putting that on the morning announcement. So it's all items to be able to help support that program.
But it could be like assemblies, that kind of stuff as well.
All right, if everybody's good for 64, we can go to 65. Insurance. Maintenance. All right, moving on to page 66.
Sorry, Ms. Chair, can I
Yeah, go ahead.
backtrack for a moment? I just
Sure.
gotta find the right one. Looking for the repairs line. 66, okay. I'm just looking at the actuals for repairs at the middle school over the past couple of years.
Are you at line 1898?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
1898. Actuals for 2021 was 78,620. Actuals for 2022 was 76,609. Actuals for last year were 174,855. Is this enough to do the repairs that are needed? Because I know when school board member Bump and I attended the middle school review, there was a leak in the roof. And I don't know if that's being repaired this fiscal year or next fiscal year as part of the budget.
Has already been repaired.
Already been repaired?
So Jared, I think that we talked on Monday a little bit about this, and Scott can elaborate more. There are a couple of lines that we know are low. So the substitute line would probably be the most significant one, and the board did take action with respect to that line. These repair lines would be the others. So we definitely have overspent these historically. And we talked about it, and I think in the effort of not continuing to increase the budget more and more, we chose to level fund those, recognizing that it's likely not enough.
So we do have the capital reserve fund on some of these items, that's one. And two, you'll recall the last 3 years, throughout the year, we've had a situation that might have arisen, and we just said, hey, can we do a budget transfer from a line to deal with it? But with the budget being the way that it is this year, we just didn't. You are certainly correct when you say that some of our schools, the repair lines could be higher, but as the superintendent alluded to, this is just an effort to try to keep the budget as reasonable as you can possibly have it, given the circumstances that we're in this year.
The other piece I would add is all things construction related have gone up incredibly. So repairs that used to cost $1,000 now cost $2,500. Repairs that used to be $5,000 now cost us $10,000. So even though we're aggressive about getting multiple quotes, everything in the trades is just costing more. So it doesn't really help the argument of why we're not recommending an increase to this line, but I think more than anything, just like Scott said, we recognize how much the budget is already up, and we were trying to identify, yeah, there are probably a couple lines that we really should adjust, but we didn't.
So let me ask a question. I'll come back to that philosophical statement. But the heating HVAC specifically, we're looking at $13,000 for a repair that is needed at the middle school. If that is a repair, is this a service repair or is this a hardware repair?
Or is that a service contract?
Randy has provided me with these numbers to what he thinks would be repairs that might happen throughout the year. In
these
terms
are
of historical.
hypothesized.
Right. Okay. These are not like, we don't expect to do $10,000 of interior, exterior repairs, including catch basins, but it's what has kind of been the norm. But you could have a year where it's double that, and then something else is less. So it's just, these are very fluid. So when you have electrical repairs, we spent more in electrical repairs than $6,500 last year at Mountain View, but but the year before that, we didn't. So it's just what, on average, he attributes that we're going to spend on those particular, items. It's also, by me putting in notes, note amounts, maybe that's an injustice. Those are all the things that are included in that line, recognizing that some years, one may be higher than the other. I will tell you that sprinkler system repairs at Mountain View Middle School this year are out the roof, so way more than $8,000. But on average, they're not usually, double that, but this year they're bad. We'll have an insurance claim on one. So that's really my best explanation there, is that one, we're trying to keep the budget as reasonable as possible, and two, that those numbers in those individual lines fluctuate from year to year. And if you want, I can take those numbers out, and this way
Well, no, they're justifications on why we need that amount in there for the budget. So I appreciate us being able to say, every year, we know that we have to do some HVAC. We know something's going to break. On average, this is how much it's going to cost. Not saying what part of the machine it is, but knowing that it's going to happen. I get that. I guess what I'm concerned with, and this has been my philosophical disagreement with some people for 6 years, I would rather have a budget that represents reality of what we're spending. The more budget transfers we do means the less forecasting accuracy we had. So if we know we're going to be spending $100,000 for repairs, we should be putting $100,000 in the repairs line instead of trying to say, well, we know we're going to underspend a different line and we're going to do a budget transfer. This gives us the ability to really have confidence in what we're presenting to the community, because budget transfers there are some risks that we don't know about. There are some risks that are going to occur. I get that. But when we know that we're going to be doing budget transfers because we inaccurately forecasted, I find that just loses confidence in our ability to present a competent budget. That's my opinion. I think Scott and team does a great job, but if we know we're going to be doing a budget transfer, I think we should be addressing it now with the foresight and empirical evidence that we have. End of soapbox rant. Thank you.
No, you're good, Jared. I see Dan's hand. Go ahead, Dan.
So how would you then, Jared, take what Brian has always said is the teacher turnover money? Because we budget based on current personnel, and we know there's teacher turnover money, and rather than inflate the budget and then return a lot of other money, how do we compensate for those adjustments?
Yeah, so I love this question. So we know that happens, and our default budget has to be with what we have right now. Right. When we have a delta in any kind of employee services, again, my philosophy was we shouldn't be using that for transfers to other things. We should be giving that back to the taxpayers because we appropriated that amount of money specifically for our current workforce. And if it's wrong, we should be giving that money back to the taxpayers versus trying to transfer it to another line that we know we're underfunding. That's my opinion of that one, Dan.
And interestingly enough, this past year, we didn't have teacher turnover money. And it was, I think, the first, and maybe we would need to go back
Yeah,
and double check everything, but because we hired experienced teachers this year, you'll remember that I shared with you the average experience was 10 years. The teacher turnover money that historically we've always had, we did not have this year. So that is new in terms of not being able to kind of rely on that money.
I also just want to remind the board, and especially for some of those board members who are new, that the last 2 or 3 years, there have been, whether it be health trust refunds, there's been extra monies given from the state that we spent on repairs. So to give you a great example, we have done repairs to items, like last year, an AC unit that was, teetering went, and we repaired that $23,000. So that actual that you're looking at Mountain View, it includes an AC unit that was like $20-something thousand that, we didn't really plan on, but we had to do it. That's one. But in those other years, if you remember, we were like, okay, we have this health trust money, and we're going to do some of these, like, they were mostly capital stuff, right? So I think I want there to be some assurance for the community and for the board itself that when you had those refunds in those 2 consecutive years, you did it on capital expenditures for the most part, on things that were in your CIP that were repair equipment related. That's all I'm going to say.
Including, Scott, the one-time fiscal capacity disparity aid that we used to do the new modular at Glen Lake.
So there's some of that that's showing up in those actuals that was, from extra, I guess, revenues that we didn't think we were going to get, but we did. So tells a little bit of the story.
But somewhere in Concord, Mr. Loring is sitting at home probably watching this saying, Mr. Talbot's on the right track, you should definitely increase his lines.
I told him not to watch tonight.
I think Retta.
Someone's phone going to ring.
Scott.
You had your hand up, Retta?
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm siding with Jared on this one. It seems like, the repairs are kind of things that happen every year, and that line should really represent the reality. I think we're all aware that prices are going up, and then if we have that money and we're buying capital projects, or if we need to use the revolving loan fund or the CRF and to pay for those things, then that's fine. But repairs are kind of like, you've got to have that in the budget, because it's going to misrepresent reality down the road. All of a sudden, there's at some point when maybe not all the same people are at the table, they'll wonder what the heck happened. Why was there this huge jump? Whereas if we know it's going to be closer to a higher number, we should just go with that.
And the building's not getting younger.
Right.
And repairs are getting more costly. So there is a fair amount of logic in this.
So I'll make a motion then to for reference line 1898, I would like to add to the new an additional $20,000. So the new would be $22,550, and the proposed would be $70,500. And I'm asking for this based on our empirical information, our actuals that we've used for the prior years, to be at least a little bit more in line with that. So that's what I'm asking for, is an additional $20,000 in the new column.
All right, so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
By Ellen. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Ginny.
My only comment to that is, and I'm kind of going both ways on it, is we can add extra money to this, but if we bring a budget forth that people don't vote for, then we have to deal with a default budget that takes away all of the repairs. So, we're kind of in a catch-22 situation. Just pointing that out.
Right, no. Thank you, Ginny. Go ahead,
Just my
Jared.
rebuttal on that is, Ginny, I absolutely understand what you're saying, but in our default, we have $47,950, so we still will have money there. And I agree that there is that worry about default versus proposed, but I think we should be putting our best proposed budget that actually reflects why we're using the money and why we need it. And I agree with you. I am worried that it might not pass, but, you know, I think we should be honest and have an accurate forecast of what we should be doing to our taxpayer, with taxpayer money.
Thank you, Jared. I saw Dan's hand up.
And to add to that, I think what we are doing tonight, if this passes, is we're sending something to the Budget Committee for their recommendation and consideration, and if they think it's not something they would support, they would back it off. And so if we can get the Budget Committee to support it, then we're good to go. If they come back to us, then we can do what, you know, either approve or disapprove what happens, so.
Right, true. All right, so I have a motion to increase this line by 20,000. I have a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous.
So I just want to be clear, you're adding 20,000, so the new column will say 22,550.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And the proposed would be 70,500.
All right,
This is
so we can, all
reference line 1898.
right, so we can move on to page 67.
I have a question about 1943, MBMS athletic student transport. I was under the impression we didn't have any athletic student transport the past couple of years. Are we expecting that to change?
We really want to. We really want to, so that is correct. So since COVID, we have been unable to staff those runs. Scott, do you have any sense of how they might be thinking that this is looking? Because I want to be clear to all middle school parents, our inability to provide transportation is a function of the truck center's inability to provide that service. It has nothing to do with our desire to purchase that service.
I don't have any more updates, you know, on that. We also, you'll see as we talked about transportation earlier, we want to have more bus runs, but although they have a couple of extra drivers, they don't have enough to ensure consistency. And we made the decision not to add a couple of more bus runs and then have to then consolidate when someone resigns or gets sick, because if you don't have those backup drivers, that's what you're faced with. And, you know, the choice between having what we have now and having two more, but then having to consolidate them every other day was not something that we wanted to embark upon. So until they get like 4 or 5 extra bus drivers, so then we can add, but unfortunately, as quickly as they add them, folks leave. So we're still in the same position.
But we would hope to be able to offer that next year.
But in this particular one, we want this. I mean, this is an issue. I get phone calls from parents about this, so this is not, it's not going away. We want to do it, and hopefully we'll get to a point where we can.
Perfect, thanks.
Thanks, Nicole. All right, so we can move on to page 68. The top part finishes out the middle school, and then this next part is the high school. So that we can finish up the middle school if anybody has any questions. If not, we'll move on to the high school. All right, we can move on to page 69.
Nope.
Oh,
Sorry, I thought we were finishing up the middle school before we moved on to the high school.
yeah, it's on the same page. Go ahead.
Just a question for reference line 1953. I see that there's no budget in there for other support staff salaries. Is this going to a different line, or is this moved to the district? I guess I'm just trying to understand why we no longer have monies in that line.
Good question. Mr. Gross?
I don't know. I don't know.
Kate does these, doesn't she?
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that.
We'll find out. Because if that's a position that should be carried forward, we want to make sure we don't miss it.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to keep in mind too that Brian, at the high school, we did go down someone, and then we repurposed
We
positions to do.
eliminated the in-school suspension teacher.
Right, and there were other things.
It was a one of one, and this
Yeah.
was the year we did it, so that may be what that was, but we'll see if Mrs. McGrath can confirm that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jared.
See, I was actually thinking it was more of a support level person that we were repurposing those, but
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Are we on 69?
Yeah, we can move on to page 69. You have a question on there, Alan?
Just because it's maintenance, that's like a $3,000
What number?
reduction.
What reference number?
Oh, let's see, 1975.
1975, okay.
It was a very good year.
And it went down 3,100.
3,000, yeah. Oh, it just kind of surprises me
Is
that,
that a reduction based on actual, Scott?
yeah.
well, 23 and 24 were $9,000.
That was budget. We
The
spent
budget
31
amount, so we
spent
were spending less of
32.50.
that, so we weren't spending all of that, so we made a corresponding
These are
decrease.
the budgets.
Yep.
So I do need this. Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jared.
Thank you. Reference line 1986. I know that we have the laptop lease there that's really driving that number. Is this going to be a yearly fee, or is this just like a one-time we're buying
No,
these?
it's yearly. It has been yearly.
Because I see in the equipment rentals for this line, 2021 actuals was $61,000. 22 actuals was 23, a little under $24,000. 2023 actuals was $4,251.
Yeah, they came off lease,
Okay, so, but we're going to be looking at a $70,000 roughly in
right?
our
So that
default.
those came off lease, and then you'll recall that we got that grant.
Yeah.
And that's how it enabled us to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jared. All right, if everybody's good with 69, we can go on to page 70. All right, we can move on to page 71. All right, we can move on to page 72.
Scott, looking at line specifically 2073, which is the replacement equipment line, I know it says that theater lighting and GHS theater multi-year replacement for $11,000.
Yeah.
Didn't we just do a lot of the lights in here?
It's the lights that are,
stage lights?
there are 4 or 5
bar.
bars that are behind the stage. We did all the lighting in the house, the seating area, but not behind the stage.
So this is just kind of like a cycle of light replacements we know we're gonna need?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I should point out, as you often ask, what was in the budget that was cut. Line 2068, we did put another lab in there, but we removed it. So 2068, technical program replacement equipment. So we did have in a proposal to add as new another lab, so we would be replacing the physics and the music labs, but we're going to be picking one of them to replace.
Question on line 2064. Do we have the same issue there with the assistive technology iPads that we moved to the other line?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good catch.
good catch, Nicole. So we'll need a motion for that.
What line was that, please?
2064, the 1,100 needs to be moved to the 1,200, the 5,000. Someone want to make that motion?
Well, let me just tell you the number
Okay.
so that it's in the motion.
Need to know where it goes to.
It would be, the line that you have is 2064, to reduce that from 5,000 to 0, and then in line 2144, increase that from 0 to 5,000 in the base column.
So moved.
Who did that, Nicole?
Second,
All right, Nicole made the motion, Jared second.
and just to make sure, that 5,000 you're saying in the base as in the default,
Yes,
and then 5,000 would be for the proposed.
yes, yep.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. All right, if everybody's good with 72, we can go to 73.
For the sake of, so we don't have to spend a ton of time searching for it, but can there be a motion to authorize me to review any other schools that have the assistive technology and to allow me to move it from the 1,100 to the 1,200 lines?
So moved.
Yeah, Jared makes that
Second.
motion. Do I have a second? By Nicole. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right, page 73. All right, we can move on to page 74.
Looking at line 2129, I see GHS testing for $2,000. We just haven't even broke $1,000 in any of our actuals for prior years. We had $390, $382, and then last year it was $1,000. It might have been due to COVID that we didn't have it in those, not 21 and 22 years. But should this stay at $2,000 or should it be dropped a little bit?
So this one will be even a little further complicated, that our school psychology services here are a contracted service now, so that provider typically brings their own tests. So, so that cost of $2,000 wouldn't even replace one test kit that our either psychologists or some of our educators use.
I know this is sped because it's a 1,200 line,
Yeah,
so.
it's special ed, but this one will be wonky because we had to go from an employee to a contracted service.
Okay.
But that 2,000 would typically not even buy one test kit. So Those test kits that we use are all on a replacement cycle, and when you have a new kit that comes out, you have to buy them. So it could be that we just had a couple of off years that we didn't buy new test kits, but they are very expensive. They're $3,000 to $4,000 for those different assessment kits typically.
Maybe, maybe this is a reference line 2130, the special ed testing based on actuals. Maybe we should be striking that because that statement doesn't actually, it's not accurate. Our actuals have been lower than $2,000. So this is just more of a,
I can deal with the note. That's no problem.
thank you.
So is 2,000 enough?
Yes.
Well, if they haven't been spending it historically, I would say it's definitely enough.
Okay.
But this would be an example that when a test cycle comes up, that you could see a bump that we have, one year that is a significantly larger expenditure because we had to replace a whole series of tests.
All right, moving on to page 75. All right, we can move on to page 76. We can move on to page 77.
Ask a
Yeah.
general question
Sure.
about GHS. During the course of the past year, the board's approved a number of, I guess you call it course revisions at the high school. I just want to confirm that those changes are reflected in here.
They are. So you've seen a couple that have already gone by. One was for a new AP computer science program. So there are a couple programs that are already included.
Yeah, and so we're going
Yep,
through,
we-
I'm like, well, I know I couldn't do a one-on-one, so I just want to confirm.
We got them.
Okay.
We got them.
All right, we can move on to page 78. Moving on to page 79.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, I'll help.
I had a big star, though I don't know why I had to put a big star on my list. Reference line 2291, the adult ed GHS testing of $3,000. I think we talked about that when we were with the budget committee, I can't remember why I started this, but
Because they are asking for us to pay.
Yeah, so this is
And
just,
then get
I think this,
reimbursed.
yeah, this is a slightly different model, and Scott can elaborate on this. The high set is what board members may recall hearing about. It's like the high school equivalency test. So kids or adults pay for that, and then there's corresponding revenue associated with this one. And I think
So-
in the past, Scott, did we just not budget? We took the revenue, but we didn't budget for
No,
the.
we didn't really have this. So this year, we're adding 3,000 to the budget, and we're adding 3,000 to revenue as a push. So it's not, if, it's,
well, I think if I recall, this is putting the emphasis or the risk on the taxpayers because the students would pay to take the test, and if they didn't, they couldn't take the test, versus now we're paying to take the test, and if they don't reimburse us, they're still able to take the test.
not really the case. So the student pays up front to take the test. There may be some instances due to socioeconomic issues where the school is going to front the money and then allow the student to pay it back over time. So there's going to be that risk, but the majority of these instances are simply we act as a pass-through.
And-
No different than AP classes or other things where we take in revenue and then we pay it to the testing organization and it's returned. So
But this,
it's no
this
different.
one's even a little bit different, that they typically won't get scheduled to be tested until they paid.
Yeah.
So where like the AP is a kind of more of a global test administration, these are very much individual. So if you come in, you want to take the high set, great, give us your check. Once you're clear, we schedule you to take the test. So I think the
Yeah,
risk here
it's-
is probably pretty low.
This is even way better because the guidance department or the GAP director themselves are the ones who are going to administer this. So they have to schedule. So as the superintendent stated, the risk is really more if there's a socioeconomic reason why we front that money and then we arrange like a pay plan and they take the test and then they kind of renege on the pay plan. But I think it's going to be low monies in that respect. Most of them are going to pay.
So I can also share, I got a message from Mrs. McCann, who's watching at home. They also were trying to incentivize students to have more students take this test, because this counts as a completion under our high school evaluation. So I think that they were trying to be more aggressive about having more completers. So if we had a student who was considering dropping out, we might encourage them to try to take the test because that would count for them.
We do that today.
We're doing that now more
Yeah.
aggressively, correct?
Yeah, I guess, again, philosophical difference, I just want to state it so that we all acknowledge it. If the check doesn't clear in today's world, they are not scheduled for the test. They cannot take the test to get accreditation, to get their, formerly what was known as GED.
Right.
What we're saying now is, we will pay for the money and you will pay us back. That is putting the taxpayer on the hook for that person.
But hang on, it's not exactly how it works. It's the individual identifies that they want to take the test, and we say, great, here's the amount, write us a check, and when it's cleared, we'll schedule you.
Right.
That's today.
That's,
Today and tomorrow.
and next year.
Then why do we need this $3,000 if that's the case for tomorrow?
Because you still have to, okay, it's very much like food service, or it's a gross appropriation, so we have to raise the money even though we're getting the corresponding revenue. So the intent is that we're going to raise $3,000 and get $3,000 in receipts. Reality is that we might raise $3,000 and only get $2,500 or $2,750 in receipts because we might have a few who need the help and may not pay it back.
But budgetarily,
80 to
this would
90%
allow
are
us
going to pay it.
to make an individual decision if a family had a hardship, that they weren't able to pay for the test, that we would have.
Right.
But I would say that would be the rarity.
And then we end up with more students that are getting a diploma that they continue on in a career.
And it helps
do
our
better in
graduation
their
rate.
life. helps our graduation rate, yeah.
So I saw
So-
Nicole's hand up.
Yeah, my comment was kind of similar to Ginny's, actually, that I think the person presenting on this at the Budget Committee meeting said that these tests are $25 apiece. If someone really can't afford the $25 but really wants to get their high school equivalency, I would love to make sure we can make that happen for
think
them.
it's
It's a benefit to the whole
five
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, I think it was a total of $150
Yeah,
for all
25
5
per
tests.
test.
Per
times-
test, yes, and they have to take a
times,
few.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicole. Jenny, do you have anything else more to say?
Yes, I'm done.
You're good,
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna, just engage me for 30 seconds. Having gone to a adult diploma ceremony as a former school board member was probably one of the most beautiful things. I have top 10. I went to 3 of them, and seeing people who are adults or students who struggled in high school get their high school diploma, nothing better than that. So I just want to concur on that statement.
All right, so we're going to move on to page 80.
Just so you know, he asked my question.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had a question, Ellen. All right, we can move on to page 81.
So I would share on reference line 2327, the AP testing of 9,500. That would be similar to the high set where there's corresponding revenue coming in associated with those tests.
Just as a question,
Yeah.
specifically on that line item that you referenced, looking at our actuals, they have been historically a heck of a lot lower than what we're budgeting. For testing, we had 8,367 in 2021, $8,110 in 2022, and rounded to $12,700 in 2023. But we're asking for 22,500. I just want to make sure that we acknowledge that this is extremely higher than what we had previously.
And we've got a request for 500 more.
So this is strictly just because we're putting AP testing in this line?
Scott?
Well, but for the extra $500, yes, but the cost of PSAT, that is also now part of, that is how it's my understanding that this is what's part of our assessments. So if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it should be SAT, but it's part of the 11th grade assessment. So we don't have a choice in that. That's
So was that just put
SAS.
in, was that just put in for this year though? Because we
No.
didn't really have it in our prior years. It didn't drive the amount of money that we spent, so.
I suppose we could phone a friend, Kim McCann, who's,
I wonder if maybe we're supposed to be paying for AP testing out of this line and we're not.
I would not, I don't know.
Oh, here comes Mrs. McCann.
We've
Parents
added
pay
some new
for
AP classes too. Is that accounting for
If you
them?
take more than 2, you pay for 2 and the rest are free. So maybe that's a difference.
So Kim's saying the PSAT has historically been paper and pencil, and now it's moved to an electronic.
Computer, yeah.
And she said that in the past, the AP tests may not have been paid out of this line.
Okay.
Okay. Again, just noticing that there's a significant delta here. I want to make sure that we have a good explanation for it.
Yeah, so for this one, I would certainly say we have a new curriculum coordinator overseeing that, so I would expect that those AP costs would be coming out of this line, and maybe in the past they didn't, but that's where they're supposed to be.
Okay. So somewhere on this budget, we probably had a decrement of something, hopefully.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we can move on to page 82 if everybody's set.
And Kim also shared that we've continued to see an increase in the number of students taking AP tests, so that has continued to go up.
Thank you, Kim.
Gotta love technology.
Yes. All right, we can move on to page 83. If everybody's good with 83, we'll go to 84.
So on 84, reference line 2422, Scott, $8,716 reduction. When you mentioned the increase at Mountain View, this is the corresponding decrease that you had spoken of?
Yeah, yes.
We can move on to page 85. Page 86.
Just a question for voice communications, which is reference line 2474. I see that local and long distance telephone is costing us $10,000. Is that like a fixed rate we have to pay? Because I don't know why we'd be calling anybody outside of Goffstown. Well, no, I could understand some calls out of
Yeah,
Goffstown.
so it would be some calls that would be long distance to parents, a lot of parents who have Massachusetts cell phone numbers, that sort of thing. But Scott, is that a accurate?
No, that is very accurate. I've seen the phone bills. So they're, you are calling people long distance. Sometimes a parent is on a business trip, or you're, and believe it or not, there are calls to Massachusetts, Vermont. It does happen. It's regional, but and we pay everything outside of, I think, New Hampshire. We do pay like more money for that. So it is appropriate. I mean, I've seen it on the bills.
Also things like vendors.
Yeah.
I know in my school we're on the phone with Power School quite a bit.
Don't they have an 800 number that we can call, though?
I don't know. I don't call them.
Or they should.
They should. I get it. That surprises me that we're paying that just for the high school, so.
Right.
Enough said.
Go ahead, Scott.
I just realized that when we just did the high school line, on the Gale subscription, that I made a mistake on, so if you can go to
On
page,
85?
yeah, can you go to page 62 for the Mountain View one?
62.
Line 1781. The total cost of the Gale subscription is $30,000 split between two schools, so my note amount was correct, but my new amount was incorrect. So there's a need for a total of $16,600 in that line. So the new needs to be not 7,000, but 10,000.
On what line?
This is reference line 1781.
81.
81, yeah, page 62.
And so the note, because I crossed it out, so the note for the Gale subscription should be
15.
15?
Yeah. So I would just need a motion to that effect so that that's correct. I apologize for the error.
I'll make a motion to increase the new amount on line 1781 from 7,000 to 10,000.
Correct.
Which would bring our proposed from 13,600 to 16,600 based on the business administrator's direction.
Second. Thank you, Jared. And Ellen, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks.
There's no corresponding changes we need, Scott, right?
No,
Just
I'm
that-
going to make it in the system.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we can go to page 85.
Just out of curiosity, what hazardous waste do we do?
What number are you asking about, a
Let me
particular
go
number?
across here. 2470?
You on
On
86?
page 86?
Yeah.
2470, oh, removal of hazardous waste, 1,000.
Probably for chemistry and stuff like that, I would imagine.
Nursing.
Yeah, so that would include like your sharps, that would include, I would
Medical.
agree, it could be medical, it could be chemistry type things.
Biology classes.
We also do dissections, so after the dissections, the material has to be dealt with.
Right.
Good question.
Also, line on the same page 86, line 2,479, 2479, printing and binding. I know that this has kind of gone down. Is this the student handbooks? I know it says agendas. Maybe I just not,
They call it.
Now, from what I understand, it's calendar agendas that the high school students are offered if they want them.
okay.
And they stopped printing a lot of them, but are we printing even less, or are the kids using them?
No comment.
I see our actuals were 6,500 from 2023, and our budget has remained flat for this, but same thing, I thought we were stopping.
We stopped, yeah, maybe Kim
Supplying
can
those.
answer that.
Mrs. McCann still using student agendas?
Oh, she's fast.
I think less and less, but still using.
Okay, so keep it at the 6,500.
Scott, you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
We'll
so,
give another, yeah, but say, we'll just give another year of that,
See
see
how-
if we
Yeah.
need to,
yeah,
Yep.
if they end up in the recycling bin at the end of the year or something.
right, to start making less. All right, you can move on to page 87.
Actually, I was going to ask facetiously, for line 2486, all these dues and fees, if we drop one of these, will we stop getting the volunteer testing that we always have to do? It's a surprise testing? Just
The
asking.
random surprise testing.
The random choice.
Yeah, the random,
How we're randomly selected
Yes.
for NAEP testing
year.
every single year
Just-
at every level that it's available.
Yeah.
just wanted to ask a question.
Mrs. McCann also responded with respect to the agendas, the agenda books that we make them. We give them to 9th and 10th graders and make them optional for juniors and seniors. So I think we're still trying to encourage the younger kids to develop those good habits of kind of being organized and supporting their executive functioning.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. All right, so we can go to 87.
Just looking at line 2508, I know that in the notes we're saying that we're going to be looking at graduation for St. Anselm's College next year. Just want to agree that we're going to
Yes.
continue that tradition, or back to that tradition?
We're back to that tradition.
Okay.
Just the predictability of being indoors. And it's a beautiful space.
All right, moving on to page 88. This is maintenance. All right, we can move on to page 89.
Just looking at line 2558, just repairs, I know that we're increasing it so that we're at $60,000, but historical trend, 2021, $75,000, 2022, $102,000, 2023, $117,000. Kind of the same thing that we talked about at the middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Scott, you increased this one by 9. Were you thinking that that was?
It was for the exact same reasons that I've given before, is that we have done certain projects, due to the fact that we had funds available, to do them, and it made sense to. I'm still, I totally get what board members, have stated before, but I think that 60,000 is a reasonable number. If something goes awry, we need to repair something, we have a CRF, and if we need some, and if we can't use that for some reason, then there is, a transfer if need be. But I do think that I also am concerned about having a budget that passes. And given, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, this is a significantly higher budget due to things that are outside of our control, like health insurance, special ed costs, already approved contracts. I think just trying to be as, prudent as possible. I just don't want to, when I prepared it, I wanted to just be reasonable in doing so. Knowing that, we have other tools at our disposal. The CRF is one. If it was a true emergency, we have the 5% contingency too. So there are other means of doing it if it's a repair that is an emergency.
Thank you, Scott. Is everybody good with page 89 then? We can move on to page 90. And then we can go to 91, which is the last page.
Just because it crosses over, Ms. Chair. Just looking at vocational student transportation, I know that that is higher than actuals. Is this another situation where we just haven't had the bus coverage
Yes.
to be able to do this?
Yeah, and we have had to resort to a whole slew of solutions here, of which one of them is paying mileage. So, and the state has helped, but it's a nightmare to do those reimbursements. So we want the buses, no doubt.
Thank you.
All right, so that is the budget line by line.
Okay.
Good review.
Yes.
Special thanks to Vice Principal McCann for taking the
Yes.
time to watch us and listen
Answer
All
questions.
in?
from a comfy chair, hopefully.
Do we need a motion with regard to the bottom line, or?
Well, we were talking about that earlier with Scott, so some numbers got changed. So Scott has to put some stuff in the budget, so the question is, he would like to have a few days to make sure he has everything.
No, I need a few minutes now.
You can do it now?
Yeah.
Well, if we go over CIP, would that give enough time to Scott, or are we not going to go over CIP?
If you can give me like just 2 to 3 minutes.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
You could also recess for a few minutes and just take a break and let Scott have the,
Do you need a motion to recess?
no.
No? Okay.
Yes, Ms. Chair, are we looking at, potentially looking at CIP tonight, or,
It
I know
wasn't
that-
on the agenda, but
I don't know if it was just under general budget discussion, if we needed to talk about that.
I think the bigger question is whether you feel like you're ready to vote on the final budget and move it on to the Budget Committee. Scott just gave a thumbs up. That was definitely not 3 minutes.
I know, and before you
Well,
said
you're
you wanted
over-
a few days.
You have to, like, try not to overpromise, and so I just tried to, that was a sales ploy, I guess, but, so, here's what you have, folks. So for Denise, and I'll give you a paper tomorrow in the office, but your FY '25 general fund, this is general fund only, Fund 10, the default budget is $52,583,023. Your FY '25 new spending is $317,987. Therefore, your proposed FY '25 general fund budget is $52,901,010. Okay? Now, keeping in mind that you also have a food service budget of $1,418,900 that is not raised by taxation. And you also have a FY '25 special revenue or grants budget of $1,400,000.
So Scott, can we do those one more time? So the FY '25 default, you said was 52,583,
Yes, 023.
023. And the
New
FY
spending.
'25 new, 317,987.
Correct?
And for a total FY '25 proposed of $52,901,010.
Correct.
Food service, $1,418,900.
Yeah, yes,
Grants, $1,400,000.
correct. Which means that
The total gross appropriation,
is $55,719,910.
One more time, please.
Hold on, 55,
What is that?
719,910. That's your food service budget.
You had said 1,400,000. Did I miss something? 900. Okay.
Do I need to repeat any of that, or?
Nope, got it.
Okay.
So at this point, with the exception of the minor changes for the iPads, from that 1,100 731 line to the 1,200 731 line that Scott will...
Those are pushed.
Those will just be even.
Right.
If you wanted to move the budget tonight, you would be able to do that to the Budget Committee based on those numbers.
Or we have Monday night in our schedule that we could come back.
We have
and do
Monday
it.
night scheduled as well,
Next week?
Yeah,
next Monday.
if everybody wanted to have a few days.
Scott, just fast and dirty, so our default number is how much percentage over our current budget?
6.72%.
And if the proposed was adopted, how much would that be over our current budget?
7.36%. And I want to, interestingly enough, that is a number that's the highest that I've seen since I've been doing this job. There was a survey that was sent out to business administrators across the state, and I was one of 8 or 10 people who completed it, and I looked to see what those results were, and it was a low of 5.5 and a high of 8% increases in all of those school districts that submitted the survey. So, and then the other question, it was a question of what has your budgets been prior, like last year, where we saw I think it was almost a 4% bump. And we were very much in line with all those other school districts. And then the other question on the survey was, what is driving the costs? Well, health insurance. So we saw a 14% increase in our health insurance here in Goffstown, our guaranteed maximum rate. That was the equivalent of over $1 million. Other school districts saw anywhere from 6 to 25% increases in their health insurance. The other major drivers were previously approved contractual agreements with teachers and staff. And then the last one, as you know, are special ed costs, both on transportation and out-of-district placements, which are increasing our budget approximately $700,000. So that's it. You have gone through this budget line by line. You're seeing that, there aren't that many increases. There are no new staffing. It is simply just a realization of the wages, the health insurance, and special ed costs that are probably accounting for 95 to 97% of this, which, again, I'm not making excuses. I'm just trying to, explain, where we're at. And Ellen, before, I know you have your hand raised, I will also say that as the son of a mom who's on Social Security, who was not too pleased with her 3.3% increase this year, or next year it's going to be. But last year, Social Security, the last couple of years, it's been 6 and 8%. So I think what we're seeing here on the school district side, not just Goffstown, but everywhere in New Hampshire and probably in other states, is that we're on the tail end of the thing. So inflation didn't get us early on like consumers did, but it did for us as we tried to keep up with wages and obviously the health insurance. That's what's kind of driving it. So again, not making excuses. I'm just trying to lay out the facts that we're on the tail end of this inflation bubble, and we're seeing it now where consumers, and we all saw it as consumers, say more last year and this year to a certain extent, but a little bit slower. So that was it.
Ellen?
Yeah, of the percent increase, 7.36, what percent of the increase is each of those major items, the insurance, the special ed, and the contracts?
If I were that good, I shouldn't finish that sentence. I don't have that data. But suffice to say that I feel pretty comfortable that it represents 95% of our increase are the things I just mentioned.
Total?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's only
So,
like-
I mean, I would feel pretty comfortable by saying that it's at least 6.5%.
Yeah.
Those
So
things.
that would indicate it's only about 2% is an increase to our operations. To the non-health and salary.
If that.
If that.
That's being way overly generous.
In other
so-
words, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room that we didn't see a whole lot of.
Down and dirty
increases.
math here, 1.1,
Oh,
1.4,
that
like,
reading program.
yeah, you're looking at, I would say at least 6.5% of that increase of the 7.36 is related to everything I just mentioned.
Yeah, yeah.
So what is everybody's thought with the budget? Do we want to sit on it and come back Monday night? Or is everybody ready to move this to the budget committee? Now, the budget committee can cut stuff, and then Jared would come back with recommendations.
Don't blame it on me.
No, I know. No, I wouldn't.
I guess I'd like to know from our representative what his thoughts are. Are we done, or?
Well, we're not done. So, as the liaison to the budget committee has a lot on its mind. Yes, the school budget is the majority of our taxes. The budget committee is also looking at stuff from the town. I haven't seen the town numbers, I don't know what their insurance is, but they have 3 or 4 collective bargaining agreements that are gonna be on the warrant article. That are gonna be increases for their unions. And so holistically, we're talking some, excuse my term here, we're talking some damage to a taxpayer. However, going through the budget as well as we do at the school, going through the forecasting we do as well at the school, I've been on the budget committee, I've been your rep for I think 4 or 5 years now, and there's always good discussions, but we always have the data to back up why. Why is it important that we have to collect this money, not only for our students and our children, but for our community, because it's not just our kids. The schools are used for deliberative sessions. The upkeep is needed. There's other things that we do other than just for teaching and learning. You know, with what we have for adult ed, the vocational work that we do. I think I can defend this budget with Scott's help very, very well at the budget committee. Not to say that there aren't going to be cuts. Not to say there aren't going to be discussions. Not to say that they might actually want increases too. You know, because when we talk about supporting voting and the voting machines, that might be something that they might want to increase. But the numbers are the numbers. I think we've gone through. I think we all are plugged into our constituents. I think we're all plugged into our own staff members and administrators here. The numbers are the numbers, and I think if we're good with this, I don't think we need to wait till Monday. I don't know what additional reflection, I don't need additional reflection. We are where we are. We were very passionate about going through this and talking about it. I think we have consensus on, if not all items, most lines on here. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Jared. Anyone else? Nicole?
I mean, I have very little insight to add beyond Jared's 4 to 5 years on budget, but I was going to say too, it seems like very little wiggle room per Ellen's comment, so I don't have a whole lot to be thinking about over the next 5 days.
And I would say, I don't feel good about the percentage of increase, and anything over 4 makes me uncomfortable to begin with. But we have to remember that this is a function of a broken system of how we fund education in the state. This is an unfair burden on every local community in the state, unless you happen to be a donor town and you have more surplus of revenue than you need. And the other comparative that we have is, unlike the town, you can compare our costs to every other school district cost in the state. And that is unique to education. You can't do that. You can't compare a DPW to a DPW in another town. You can't compare police to police in another town, library, all of the different town functions. But for schools, you can. So I recognize that the percentage is higher than we're all comfortable with, but in all likelihood, I think Scott's forecasting of other school districts, this is largely what districts are going to be, and we will still continue to be a very low per pupil cost district, which, by the way, the older I get, the less proud of that I am. It's not really something that we should be all that proud of. It means that we're probably not providing services that we should. It means that we're not providing resources that we should. I'm not suggesting that we all of a sudden start spending $17,000 or $18,000 or $20,000 per pupil, but this is what the rest of the state is doing. Our costs are very low. And I recognize that we're putting Mr. Talbot in a tough position to defend the budget, but the Budget Committee has to remember, the way we fund education is constitutionally broken. And the second piece, we're still as low as anybody in the state, and our education returns on investment are high. Great schools equal property value. Any one of you who wants to put your house up for sale, guess what? You're going to do well. And the reason you're going to do well is this is a desirable community. And part of what makes a community desirable is great schools.
Thank you, Brian. Go ahead,
I
Ellen.
guess, thinking budget increase of a little over 7%, when you look at it, that's not an increase in what's happening in a classroom. This is health, our employment contracts, and what was the third one? Special ed. Those are not options. And it's not like, maybe a little less than 2% of any increase was something that might happen in a classroom. So keeping that in mind, I feel that's quite a percent, but those are required
Right.
increases. It's not like the school board just sat here or administration asked for another playground someplace or, So I think, I know I'd be willing to go and stand up to the public on this myself as well. I want to thank our administration. I think this was a phenomenal job and probably very difficult.
Yes. Thank you, Ellen.
Because there are things we know we
Right.
need.
Right. I see Retta's hand up.
No, I'm fine, Wendy.
Are you, go ahead.
Yeah,
Retta.
so all of the things that have been said and some of the information that Scott just provided, about the percentage increase, where those increases are. I don't know if this is presented with our budget to the Budget Committee in like a graph form or just statements.
I'm sure it will be.
But I think that would be really good to start the conversation so they understand how this compares to some other districts. I think it also helps to provide that context. The other thing I want to say, and this is probably more for Jared, we voted to significantly increase the Mountain View Middle School maintenance line, but we chose not to do that at the high school. And it may be a little bit awkward, like, why are you doing one school, not the other, when the actuals really very different reality. It could be explained that, by the time we got to the second building, we realized that this was going to, significantly increase the budget. In the end, it's all the same, but at some point, I don't know if it makes sense to make them a little more even in the percentage increase for the maintenance line, or if we just leave it as is, and Jared can explain that.
I would also share that this school has had more repairs and upgrades over the last 5 years than Mountain View. So we put some decent funding into Mountain View, the exterior, last year. Have you seen it? I mean, it's way better. But we did the flooring here, this theater. We've done some good things, here. It's not to say that, repairs, are repairs. I get it, but repairs are also planned. Sometimes the repairs are planned as well. And I think we have put a tad bit more emphasis on this building, say over Mountain View. And I think that would be my response to someone who asked that question. Yeah, we have Mountain View that's over 30 years old, and this renovation was done, say, 20 years ago. So we're trying to that's why there's a little bit of a disparity. And that is to catch up a little bit on what Mountain View needs.
Thanks, Scott. Ellen, did you have another?
No, I'm going to pass.
You're going to pass? Okay. So we've had a lot of discussion. If somebody wants to make a motion in a second, we can take a vote. To move the budget to the Budget Committee, or we can come back Monday night.
Okay, I'll move. I'm looking at what number to move.
Yep, go
Is
ahead,
it the
Ellen.
55, 719, 910?
No, I think we just moved the proposed to the
No.
Budget Committee.
I think
Do
Ellen
both
is
of them?
correct.
That is correct.
We are moving the $55,719,910 to the Budget
You were
Committee.
right, Ellen. Yes. All right, so, go ahead, Ellen.
I'm moving the $55,719,910 budget to the Budget Committee.
All right, I have a motion by Ellen. Do I have a second? By Ginny. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous. Go ahead, Jared.
I'm asking the board to pass a motion to direct me to specifically discuss and defend reference line 317, which is on the notes page of 11. This is a school board stipend. Ethically, I don't think I could vote for any conversation at the Budget Committee, whether to reduce that or to keep it, or really just engage in the discussion, because it has to do with pay that would actually be going into my account. In order for me to keep my licensing and ethics with my project management professional, I would like a motion from the board to direct me to specifically defend this number to the Budget Committee and vote, if needed, during the Budget Committee.
I'll make that motion.
All right, so Ellen made that motion.
I'll second.
Nicole seconds.
Did Denise get it?
Denise, did you get all that?
Yes. Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, we're unanimous.
Abstain.
Oh, Jared abstained, sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Did you get that, Denise? I did. All right, because I can't see you.
We won't be back in here. And we appreciate everyone's
Yes.
flexibility.
All right, so I think we still have to talk warrant articles and CIP stuff, and we can do that in our next board meeting would be in November, correct?
Comfortable
Or
with that,
did
Scott?
Did you want to talk CIP?
I would just say that we have been trying to pick away at CIP. We each got a copy of what that CIP looks like. We have a company, EMC, that is currently evaluating all of our building systems for the possibility of a warrant article with respect to a municipal lease. So that probably won't be done for another month. And then I have already engaged with a company that does the financing piece. So you'll have more definitive information in the weeks to come, on that. Suffice to say, though, that they're going to provide us a prioritized list of systems that need attention. And then from there, the administration, as well as the board, can then determine what are the next steps. Now, the board can always decide to defer this a year. The board can say, you know what, you made mention of X millions of dollars of items that we part of municipal lease. Well, we're only going to do priority ones, which are $3 million or something. So, but you'll have more information 3-4 weeks, I believe, in terms of what that will look like. And if you decide that you want to pursue, a warrant article, in that regard. So,
And if I can just add to that, Scott, when we started talking about this, we had not built the budget. So the premise of creating a municipal lease to start to knock off millions of dollars of projects in the capital improvements plan was before we built this. So Scott was very supportive of the idea, and we know that we have millions of dollars on the CIP, and we have no mechanism to move forward. So it may be that this may not be the year, or we need to reduce that. But when we first set out to do this, we hadn't finished the budget. We had no idea that the health insurance was going to come in what it did. We didn't anticipate $400,000 of additional special education costs. So the picture does look different than when we conceptualized this back over the summer.
right, and I would like to also add that, yes, the picture looks significantly different than it did 6 months ago. However, our process is not changing in the sense that we are still going to pursue, SAFE grants with respect to security, access control, security cameras, et cetera. So those are going to be coming out in the weeks to come. We're going to put in for that, and we could get, a few hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants. We're still going to pursue, a grant for a generator. So things that are on our CIP, we're still going to pursue them, but hopefully we'll do it with funding that is not coming from taxpayer monies. So we're never going to stop pursuing grants. So rest assured, on that one, we may have to change some strategies, slow down, alter, prioritize things given the circumstances, but we're still going to push ahead on the things that can be funded by other monies.
All right. Thank you, Scott. So since we won't have to meet Monday, the next school board meeting wouldn't be till November 6th, and that'll go back to 7 o'clock in the library. Yeah, go ahead, Ellen. Yep.
CIP items, and this is, Jared can could answer if this would be helpful. Is it worthwhile indicating what items throughout this budget are CIP related?
That would be almost, I don't think there's any.
Zero.
There's zero. There's nothing in here that was over 25,000.
And that's the long-term problem. The long-term problem is we have no money built into our general fund budget to tackle any CIP projects. We just don't have them. And our CIP is pretty comprehensive.
Yes.
So over the last 10 years, we've really made this plan much more robust. We've tried really hard to make improvements, but I will tell you, long-term, we need a plan for how to fund the CIP. And right now, that is lacking.
When are employment contracts starting to come back up for warrant articles?
So you have that in your budget packet.
Okay,
Scott
so-
provided that in the opening. Part of the reason, the rationale for the premise of the municipal lease this year was because this year and next year, we will have no contracts. So we were trying to do something off-cycle so that we weren't presenting the voters with, 3 or 4 or 5 different warrant articles when we have employment contracts, which we know are our most important elements.
So at our next meeting, would the board be discussing the option of putting forward the warrant article for a mechanism to pay for CIP?
I think Mr. Gross is suggesting that we won't be ready to do that for a couple more weeks anyhow.
I'm not thinking that we're going to have that until mid-November, probably right before Thanksgiving would be when it would. So that's why I think it's important to prep the budget committee that we're considering it. But what I'll do is this: I will work with the finance company to give you what mock-up of what numbers look like, which I kind of have right now, and then you can determine, do you want to put a warrant article out there for a 15-year municipal lease purchase at $300,000 a year over a 15-year period, and then you can then say that's something that we're considering, and I can give you different options: 3 million, 5 million, 7 million, and then you can see what that is. Many times, I will say that you can do many municipal leases whereby there is no first-year payment, and that the payment starts in technically the second year. So there are interest charges with that, finance charges with that, but that is, some people do it.
Scott, I was just going to also add that when we conceptualized the premise of the municipal lease being presented to the voters for this budget cycle, we talked about doing 2 different versions.
Yes.
2 consecutive years of different lease options or different bond warrant articles to tackle the CIP. So it wasn't just this one first municipal lease. It was a 2-step process. So if we do defer step 1, that may be fine, and this may be an appropriate action to take, but just know that this is a multi-piece plan.
Then that second year would bump up against contracts.
Right.
Potentially.
So that's why I want to go through
Potentially.
this idea. Yeah.
Another potential strategy is also the possibility of whatever that first-year cost is of your municipal lease would be somewhat equivalent to the CRF deposit that we do every year, and that you just don't do a CRF deposit this year, and that the first year is essentially almost neutral, meaning that, let's just say you have a first year's a $300,000 municipal lease payment, you would not do a CRF deposit, you would let the voters know that, and that would, kind of jumpstart your municipal lease. So those are just, I'm just giving
It would be
you.
built into the strategy.
Correct. I'm
Yep.
just sharing with you things that I have thought about, because my job is to give you the options, your job is to make the decision, so.
Okay. So more to come in the next coming board meetings, the CIP. All right, so if we're good with this, we'll move on with the agenda. Any other business that may legally come before the meeting? We do have non-public. We're going to go into a classroom around the corner.
Yeah, you'll follow me when we adjourn this meeting. We're going to go around to the right. The main office conference room is full of testing materials, so we're not able to access that today. So unbeknownst to her, we're going to go use Mrs. Mannion's classroom.
So I'll need a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A3 2L, consideration of legal advice provided by legal counsel, either in writing or orally, to one or more members of the public body, even where legal counsel is not present.
So moved.
By Caroline and second by Ellen.
Yep.
So I'm going to do roll call.
Yes.
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 Dan?
Yes.
Heather, yes. So we are in non-public.